INFOWARS has come down here to Phoenix, Arizona to speak to Sheriff Joe Arpaio and his team, the Cold Case Posse, who are investigating the eligibility of this President, Barack Obama, and his ability to appear on the state ballot. The question of this president's eligibility has been an issue ever since Barack Obama ran for the Democratic Party nomination back in 2008. What's all the fuss about? All the fuss is over a piece of paper, or a PDF to be exact, which was put on the White House website back in April 2011. Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio has put together a cold case posse team of investigators, all volunteers and at no cost to the state, all with law enforcement backgrounds. And what they've found during the course of their investigation is shocking. This document contains, according to the team, a number of digital anomalies that can only point at a forgery.
Sheriff Joe. So very briefly, I want to thank you and the legislators for being here. It's very controversial, but something has to be done. Just briefly, we had a press conference March 1 where we revealed our evidence, and we feel very strongly there was forgery on the birth certificate and the selected service form. I did write to the selected service director. Haven't received an answer, but we will continue to ask other law enforcement agencies to assist us in this investigation. But during the process, we did learn sometimes it's very difficult to get your message out, especially with the blackout, the scenes with the major media across our country. I spent 50 years as a top federal law enforcement officer and the sheriff, and I don't recall ever seeing a censorship or somewhat to conceal our investigation and not report. That's another issue. But this is very important. I said after all of this, and I did start off, I talked to my chief investigator with the posse so there'd be no taxpayer money expended. I did say I want to get into this. I want to clear the president. But unfortunately, during the course of the 6-month investigation, that did not happen. We came up with more information. I think you do know what much of the information is about. Initially, we're not going to get into everything else, but I think this bill is very important to at least, and because of what we've gone through, we think it's more important to at least have some law that you have to show that you were born in the United States. So I fully support this bill. I commend the legislators that have the fortitude to go out public on a very controversial subject. I'm not accusing the President of the United States of any crime. However, we do have 2 suspected crimes, forgery, fraud, and as a law enforcement official, I feel we have to develop that information the best way we can. Thank you.
What's the significance of this bill today, this legislation that's been introduced this week?
Well, I think it's important. It's only common sense using a law to pursue, to make sure the person that is running is who that person is. I don't think it's asking too much. I believe that our investigation probably substantiates the need for this when you look at the evidence that we have accrued in the last 6 months with our cold case posse. Anybody with common sense looking at those 2 documents that we feel are forged would say, wait a minute, you know, we better get another system going to make sure this doesn't happen again. So it's only common sense, but there's a lot of politics involved. People don't want to even talk about it. You can see there's not many people that showed up here. Everybody wants to ignore this subject. Most of the questions in that press conference on March 1 wasn't about the evidence. They didn't want to talk about that. It's old, this has been already done, this is old stuff. Why don't they talk about the evidence? Nobody's talking about the evidence, which is very interesting. And there seems to be a national blackout on this. I mean, you know, whatever I do, I make national news. When I put people in pink underwear, I always make national news. But this one, They don't want to talk to the sheriff.
How's the response been from your constituents in general about those who know about this effort?
Well, quite frankly, I didn't know how it would work, whether they would be against me, since everybody else seems to avoid the issue. But it hasn't been as bad as I thought. I don't get many negatives other than these Mickey Mouse threats and garbage through blogs, but the people that I meet, and I meet every day, I'm giving speeches. Hundreds of people a day come up for my picture and so on, but they never say anything bad about what I'm doing on the Obama thing. In fact, a lot of them like what I'm doing. So politically, it hasn't hurt me, but it doesn't matter because I would have done it anyway. But I'm a little surprised at the support on this issue, those that are willing to talk about it. Now, the majority of politicians don't even want to talk about it, Republicans and Democrats. It's like the plague to talk about this. I've never seen anything like this, and I've been a top federal law enforcement official for years and years, and I knew about the Watergate, and I've been through it all. But I never seen this situation.
Joe Arpaio is the sheriff of Maricopa County. He represents 4.5 million residents here in Phoenix. 250 concerned residents came forward to Joe Arpaio 6 months ago with concerns about the president's birth certificate and his eligibility to be and run for the highest office in the land.
The Tea Party came to me and asked me to look into it, and I gave it to my volunteer posse, made up of ex-cops and attorneys, at no cost to the taxpayers. And they report to me. I have 3,000 posses, and I happen to have a cold case posse. And I told them to look into it. I mean, what's the big deal? And when they did a good job in coming up with a lot of evidence. So what should I do? Dump it in the wastebasket and forget it? It's incumbent on me when I find suspicious activity. If I can't handle it, give it to other authorities that can, if they will, and not drop it. So I'm not dropping this. I'm going to keep moving forward.
How good is this team you've assembled, in your opinion?
Well, they're ex-cops. Mike has done a great job on this. He's living this for 24 hours a day. And just as good if he was full-time, but he's an ex-cop. He just doesn't get paid. But he has the authority under me, under the Constitution. I can swear in private citizens called the posse, and they have the same coverage as a regular deputy. They just don't get paid. So isn't this great? So I can't get all the public to say you're wasting taxpayers' money. I decided to do this right off the bat because the media would be after me. Why are you wasting taxpayers' money? Although right now, at this point in time, I could use regular deputies. We're talking about 2 possible fraud and forgery cases.
This team of investigators has been working on this case since then. And what they have found is extremely revealing, and it is unprecedented.
What I can tell you from our part in this monumental problem is the beginning of this investigation as called for by Sheriff Arpaio. We were instructed.
What? Can't hear you.
We were instructed. Any better? No? Technical thing? I have no idea how this stuff works. Okay, I'll talk about help it out. We were instructed by Sheriff Arpaio to look at this in an unbiased professional manner. There were no politics involved in this. The onset of this investigation, I told my team that we are here attempting to validate this document. Our attempts to validate the birth certificate document failed relatively early in this venture. Going forward into this document, we began to uncover more and more anomalies that could not be replicated by any test or any standard that we put forth. What that had indicated to us is this document was manufactured, constructed, and presented for a purpose. And that purpose was to deceive. That purpose meant that we had a fraudulent document. The thing that was most shocking to us was the fact that the very items to give authenticity to this document and assurance to the public that this document was creditable was the state registrar's stamp and the date stamp authorizing the registration of the document and verifying that the document is indeed factual. Those two stamps can be moved off that document, placed anywhere on the document, and they leave behind them a white ghost. There's only one way that could happen. That meant that the green safety paper background that was on that document was also placed on the document, and we discovered it was placed on the document last. That is a monumental problem. Going forward, we had to look at other information now that was surfacing regarding the identity of the candidate to be president. We were turned and pointed in the direction of a selective service card. Upon inspection of that selective service card, we discovered an anomaly that was glaring, and that had to do with the certification stamp from the post office, the date stamp, indicating that an individual presented himself for selective service as called for by law. I believe it was instituted by President Carter. I had to do it myself. You go to a post office, you present yourself, you give your identification. They take a card that you fill out, that you sign, you attest to that it is you, and they stamp it received. That date stamp, by all indications, and by our test, validate our conclusion that this document is also manipulated and most likely a forgery. That issue alone has severe ramifications, even more so than the birth certificate. There are criminal ramifications to that card. They're standing up for your country, attesting who you are. There is also statute that says that you can be held liable for not filing. You can be found guilty with a 5-year prison term and a $250,000 fine. We do not believe that card was issued in 1980, and we demonstrated that in our video. The video that we showed the press conference at the time shows that the date stamp, a year stamp, 1980, by mandate by the post office, by mandate by the government, has to be a 4-digit date stamp, 1980. On Mr. Obama's, it is just an 80. The 19 is missing. In addition to that, the 80 is offset far to the right and low to the right, unlike 17 other selective service cards that we received through a FOIA request from the Office of Selective Service, 2 of which came from the same post office within days of each other. This is a problem in identifying the individual or identifying actions of the individual whose name appears on the document. From our perspective, we felt compelled to check with the Secretary of State. What happens in situations like this? We came to learn that there are no statutory protections to protect the voting public from anybody who wants to appear on a ballot. As a matter of fact, it's not only unique to Arizona, it's through every state in the nation. Simply fill out a form, sign what you want to sign, give them the money, and they could be on the ballot to be President of the United States. There are no voter protections. From our perspective, this legislation that's being proposed to you